Welcome to the Taking Care of Tutu podcast. I'm your host, Meg Obanas, and today we're so happy to have Jessika Galvez on the podcast. She is the owner of a Maui company called Ohana Care Maui. Welcome, Jessika.
Aloha. Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you on. Will you tell us just briefly, like a little paragraph about what Ohana Care Maui does? And then I'd like to hear your story of how you got into doing that.
Of course. So, Ohana Care Maui is an in home care agency that specializes in geriatric care services. We do provide services to all ages. We've had anywhere from peds through end of life care with geriatrics, but we specialize with the geriatric side. We provide CNAs, which are certified nursing assistants, into the home of the patient to provide services so that they are able to age in place. So our goal is to allow them to stay home through the end of life if possible, and that's what their desire is.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's definitely what we provide and what our company does. Was that a good enough answer for you?
Perfect. I love it. So I want to hear about your backstory, like what made you become interested in this and sort of how did you get to being the owner of this company?
So I, right out of high school, decided to apply for the CNA grant at Maui. A friend of mine was working at Kula Hospital, and I had children very young. And my first son just after I turned 18. And so knew I needed to do something with my life.
Right.
And I,
Because those babies insist on eating.
exactly. So I decided to do the grant program. I got approved. And it's funny because when I first did that, I never intended it to be a long term thing. It was supposed to be temporary while I figured out what I wanted to do with my life. And I just,
And there's such a demand for that work on Maui that you probably were also thinking this will be a clear path to employment, like pretty much guaranteed. Yeah.
exactly. I knew I'd get a job. I knew it was needed. And so it was like, okay, let's do this so I can care for my family.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. I had my first patient and I completely fell in love with her. I felt like she was my own family and it just never stopped from there. I continued to enjoy it more and more. I ended up going into private duty CNA care and while working with multiple agencies on the island and also in the private duty side, I just saw a lot of just the quality of care wasn't quite what it could or should have been.
And so tell us more about Ohana Care Maui. How does someone typically come in as a client and like what happens after that?
So our intake process typically starts out with a phone call. Sometimes I get emails or there's our
Yeah.
lead on our website, but regardless, it comes into the office. We always start with a phone call intro. I answer any questions that they might have. I find out if they're one a good fit for us or we're a good fit for them pretty early in the call. Then I'm able to share the differences with our services, what we can provide, exactly what they're looking for. Then from there, we fill out a new client questionnaire with the family. Once we get that questionnaire back, it's all filled out electronically via email, so it's pretty easy. Once we get that questionnaire back, we set up an intake meeting with which includes an assessment with my care manager. My care manager meets them in their home. They remove them here. We go into their home and meet with them, do an assessment of the patient, give them their final cost per hour. Should they want to hear more about the contract, we go over everything in the contract. Most of the patients will sign on right then and there. Some people like to talk about family and they can sign up electronically later. So it just kind of varies for each person. As soon as that happens, the office is then processing paperwork. Typically within 14 business days, if we're not in a rush, we're able to go ahead and get started. For more urgent cases, we do our best to start as soon as possible. But it varies on staffing availability, of course.
What's the next level of care up from companionship?
So that would be considered level one care. Level one care is more often than not, it's someone that is needing a little bit more assistance physically. So they're not completely dependent, but they're also not completely independent. So we call it standby assist. And so that's somebody that might be a high fall risk. They're
I
ambulating
see.
a walker or a cane. Maybe they're losing some of their fine motor skills, so buttoning up their shirts and
Yeah.
do things like that are a little bit more challenging for them than they used to be.
Yeah.
They're hard of seeing or hearing. They're needing some light assistance in the shower, so they can probably get the easy to reach places on their own, but feet, back, washing the hair, they might need some assistance with.
Makes
Get
sense. Yeah.
into the shower and out of the shower is usually assistance is needed there for that level for safety precautions. Again, they're fall risks.
Yeah.
Uh, Earlier stage dementia would fall into that category where they're just starting to have some dementia symptoms and confusion, just needing
Yeah.
verbal reminders only. So that would be level one services.
Okay. And then what's above that?
Then we would have level two. Level two is usually complete dependence. So they're
Okay.
not able to do much on their own. And so maybe some things on their own, like I have patients that are bed and wheelchair bound for the most part, but they're still able to take their clothes on and off with some assistance,
Got it.
brush their hair on their own, but maybe we need to get the spots that they can't reach, things like that. We always encourage as much independence as possible from our patients. I
Yeah.
always tell staff, you're not there to do it for them. They should be doing as much as on their own. We're there to just help them get the job done as safely as possible.
Okay.
So it goes from that all the way to mid and late stage dementia and into end of life care in level two. So level two is a much broader
Whoa. So I would say someone in level two, it sounds like would probably need 24-hour a day care or perhaps all day care when their family members are at work or when they don't have their family with them.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Makes sense. And so you're assessing that, at the intake and then training the individual care provider with the manager on exactly how to work with that person and what their needs are. When you said some people are also cared for through end of life care. Do you folks manage that, or would you also be coordinating like with Hospice Maui in a situation like that?
Good question. So both, depending on what the family's wanting.
Okay.
Some families are a little hesitant to sign on with hospice, which
Yeah.
really encourage. We have a couple right now that are kind of in that situation where we've set up meetings and done referrals with hospice, but they've met and they're just like, we're not ready. There's that stigma that
Because yes, totally. I totally burn to me because people feel like you're giving up, that it's truly the end if you're on with hospice. But the hospice people say people don't sign up early enough.
it's true. It's true. And there's so much to benefit from signing on with hospice and being
Mhm.
accepted in hospice. And so I definitely encourage families of that there is a negative stigma behind it, but it's false. It's not true at all.